I met John Masuku 30 years ago at the BBC radio training for radio producers and managers in London. And since then, we have been very good friends, with our paths crossing frequently. John Masuku has been for many years a leading Zimbabwean radio producer, broadcaster, journalist, and communicator whose professional service extended from the days of Rhodesia, including the birth of Zimbabwe, and all the years since then up to now. When he retired from serving many years in a number of capacities with the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, he joined a pirate radio station, Voice of the People. He knows the firsthand what it looks like when your radio facilities are bombed and what it means to be in prison because you stand for freedom of truthful information. Things are better now, he says, with lots of space for improvement still. I invited John to share with me his life experience as a journalist, broadcaster, producer, mentor, friend, and about his faith. This is the first part of our current conversation, which began with John reflecting on the ways the COVID-19 pandemic has affected his country. Welcome, John.
Most of the businesses are really facing a lot of distress, and some have closed down and people have lost their jobs. The numbers with regards those who are confirmed at the moment as we speak is 551, and then 128 have recovered, and there have been 6 deaths. But we've had challenges with regard to testing equipment, so much that I think more people could have been tested. But anyway, those who have been tested have only come up with 551. There are a number of cases that are coming from outside the country. And in terms of the economy, the coronavirus came in at a very, very difficult time when our economy is in the doldrums. It has gone down, and many people have lost jobs, and they're highly dependent on informal jobs. So you can imagine if they're locked down and they're unable to go to work or to do different manual jobs in order to look after themselves, it really is a very, very difficult situation for many people. Our currency has really tumbled, and it's equivalent to the US dollar. As I speak to you right now, the official rate is $1 to about 60 Zimbabwean dollars. And then on the black market, you can go as high as 110 or 115 US dollars. But salaries have remained pegged in Zimbabwe dollars, so much that the ordinary worker, not only ordinary, but even the professionals in universities, doctors and so forth, their salaries have really been reduced to nothing. Many people, including well-educated people, are really finding life very difficult. And people can no longer travel. Some were trapped while visiting or on business, and they can no longer go back to their other jobs, either in Dubai, in the UK, South Africa, and so forth. And likewise, those who had gone to those countries are also unable to come back. So coronavirus really found us in a very difficult situation, and we're living with it in a very distressful situation. It is not yet clear when it is coming to an end, but really people are so stressed. And there's also a lot of mental health issues that are coming up because of the stress that people are receiving through this pandemic. So these are things that we have to deal with in day-to-day lives. And these are things that also as media we are trying to report about, so that these situations are known and solutions are proffered even during our Zoom meetings, on radio programs. Children are not going to school, and as a result, some of the lessons are now being held through e-learning. But of course, not many schools were prepared for e-learning. So as a result, many students are losing out on their lessons because one, it's very expensive, the Wi-Fi is expensive, and even the bundles that people buy for different telephone or networks are also very expensive. So you can imagine a rural school, they don't even have the phones, the smartphones for that. They don't have any infrastructure to be listening to those lessons. And as a result, again, that is going to bring a lot of problems, including the tertiary institutions and universities.
What would you say as a journalist and a media person? Do you find it easy to communicate the truth about coronavirus in your country, or there are oppositions to that?
Well, with the advent of social media, there are many facets to your question. First of all, people are able to communicate as individuals, and there are a lot of lies or misinformation that is going around with regards to coronavirus. And much as we try as professional journalists to do that, but at times, especially when we look forward to the mainstream media, at times they're very slow in reacting. And also, what causes that slowness is the fact that they cannot get facts very fast, because for you to spread information, it means you have to get it from government, you've got to get the truth of what's going on and so forth. So if there are delays in releasing that kind of information, you'll find that the grapevine and social media will take center stage, and there will be a lot of lies being peddled around, bring a lot of doubt and despondency in the community. But we do try as much as we can, because as journalists, at least we are allowed to move around. As long as we've got our registration identity cards, we can move around, attend meetings using the distancing that is required, and so forth. But at times that information is not always forthcoming, especially at the beginning of the pandemic here in Zimbabwe, when we faced fatalities as a result. The information about how government was reacting was very scant. And so some media organizations really compelled the government to come up with correct information through professional reporting, and we would like to applaud them for that. But this was to do with issues of what's going on with regarding to testing, how many places have been established for testing, as well as the the day-to-day updates of what was going on. It started very slowly, but right now it has improved. But one thing that has really caused a lot of dismay with regards to that is some of the donation and some of the funding that is supposed to go to coronavirus is being affected by corruption. And you don't know what's really going on, because some people are not supposed to deliver. You are then told that they've not delivered, and some of the tenders that are floated around, you then receive reports that they were not properly done, and this affects, the building of the infrastructure so that we're able to deal with this pandemic. So that's another matter that the media has been seized with, to report, procedures of how things are being done, to report any anomalies and any inconsistencies that it might notice during, all the efforts that might be taken by the state in order to address the coronavirus. And also the professionals do complain that they don't have enough equipment, and they don't even have enough funds for themselves and their families. Again, that becomes a challenge. Just health workers, including doctors and nurses and radiographers and others, staged some demonstrations because of their welfare, their living conditions, and their salaries and so forth. And they keep on being promised that the government was looking into it. And as we speak right now, the Minister of Health, because of these tenders, which have been linked to some corrupt practices, was actually arrested a few weeks ago, I think it's 2 weeks now, and came out on bail, and is no longer functioning fully as a minister. I just read a report that he was kicked out of cabinet this week. So all those things also affect the way we deal with this pandemic in the country. And as journalists, it is our duty to investigate and dig deep as to what is happening and report on it. And the moment reports come out, with correct facts and not what normally comes out in social media, then you find authorities do come to account. We hold them to account in those instances. So that's what I can say about our role at the moment.
But let me now move a little bit to our focus on you. I've just seen, I think a moment ago on Facebook, your picture from the days when you were much younger. Much younger. I think you said something like the picture, that this picture represented a time when you decided or moved into media and journalism, something like this. So I would like to ask you a question. When did you decide, and why did you decide somewhere, when you were much younger than today, many years ago, that it is journalism, radio broadcasting, communications, and those similar kind of things, that this is what you wanted to pursue in your life?
Well, there isn't much deciding that you do at certain ages in your life, but at least there was some inspiration with regards to my own life, in that in our family, we had been associated with the broadcasting industry in different forms. My own father worked for the broadcasting establishment, although he was not a journalist. He was just working in the offices. And I also had uncles who were broadcasters, and they were also an influence. And I had a brother who also worked at the broadcasting station. Well, that again was an influence. And even myself, when I was still at school, I just enjoyed writing for our school magazine, for our school newspaper. I enjoyed public speaking and so forth. So, and also with my background, I was able to master more than one language, which was one of the major requirements when we joined broadcasting during my time. We have the main languages here in Zimbabwe of Shona and Ndebele. I'm Ndebele, but I grew up in Mashonaland, but continued to visit my rural home so much that I kept my languages a notch high, which enabled me, when I finished my high school, to be recruited into broadcasting. Those days, you'd go into broadcasting after high school. Whatever qualifications I've obtained them while I'd already joined. And the initial training was on the job, trained mainly by our bosses at that time, who had experience in the BBC and other Commonwealth broadcasting stations. So those are the people who trained us. And I must say, we got very good training and mentorship with regards to discipline in broadcasting and professionalism in broadcasting from those people who were our managers. So I then was auditioned, and I passed my audition, and I started out at what was called the African Service, because that was during colonialism. We're not yet independent. So I started at what was called the African Service of the Rhodesia Broadcasting Corporation, which is now the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation. And I worked there doing all sorts of programming, news reading, interviewing people, doing some newsreel, traveling around the country, looking for interviews, being a DJ on early morning shows. It was quite varied. I was also a soccer commentator for many years, and I did some of the great commentaries of the time, including the soccer matches that involved Rhodesia and South Africa at that time. Some of the teams that came over, popular teams from South Africa, such as Orlando Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs, Moroka Swallows, Amazulu. Those are names that are very popular in this part of the world. So I was a soccer commentator, and I also did some boxing commentary, as well as political commentary where there were special events. So I really specialized in that area and I enjoyed it. And being bilingual, at times I would just take all the languages, the three languages together. I remember one of the most interesting commentaries that I had towards the end of colonialism was when I was a commentator on the funeral of a former president of Rhodesia who was called John James Rothwell. And then later on, I was to move into management, where first of all, I was a senior producer. The time when we met at the BBC, I was a senior producer. I'd moved to an educational channel because the BBC was invited to Zimbabwe to study the landscape in Zimbabwe and then make recommendations after independence as to how our media, especially our broadcasting, should be structured. So they ended up recommending that there should be 4 radio stations that cater for different tastes. And the one which was called the European Service or the General Service then became just an ordinary English-speaking service for both blacks and whites, not necessarily the white people who were reminiscing on their life in England and so forth. And then the one that I started at the African Service became a national station broadcasting in the national languages at that time. And then a new station was established for the youth because it was felt that the youth needed their own stations, because at the time they were tuning into foreign stations, including Radio Luxembourg. I'm sure even yourself living in Croatia, you were tuning into Radio Luxembourg. It was very, very popular. Also in the neighboring country, there was what was called LM Radio, Radio Lorenzo Max, as well as in South Africa, Radio 5, and so forth. So the government, then, on the recommendation of the BBC, then established what was known as Radio 3, which was predominantly youth-oriented in order to harness programs for the youth in Zimbabwe. And then the educational channel, which was going to assist in the rebuilding of our country after the ravaging liberation war situation, where programs on development, education, and so forth were going to be carried out. That's where I had moved to after moving from the African Service and then television news. After television news, I then went to this new channel. When I came to the BBC that time, I was actually working for the educational and development channel. You remember I came with the lady Tsitsi Vera, who is now late. She was coming from the English channel, Radio 1.
Well, that's quite an impressive history and CV, John. This is how you came to BBC in 1989 for this additional training. And this is when...
Yes, it was very interesting, actually, Toby, how I came to the BBC. At independence, so many governments were willing to assist the government of Zimbabwe with their training programs. Staff had to be trained, manpower planning had to be done. Some of us had been trained on the job. We had not received formal training, although personally and some friends were taking some distance courses in journalism and were writing quite a lot for some magazines and newspapers, but we had not attended a formal school, as it were. So at independence, people were being sent, to Germany, to Deutsche Welle, to Radio Free Berlin. Some were going to Egypt. Some were going to the All Africa Conference of Churches Communication Center in Nairobi, Kenya. Some were going to the GDR, it used to be the German Democratic Republic in Zimbabwe, having come out of a war of liberation. And some had been trained in Croatia and in Serbia during the liberation struggle, but that was those who had gone to war. Some were sent to Yugoslavia, and we shared those skills and built the present day Zimbabwean media landscape. And I'm glad to have played a very, very important role. And also, coming back to the BBC story, after so many years of not being chosen to go outside the country, in 1989, I met a guy from the BBC who gave me some forms. I filled them in. And fortunately, a lady, you remember our tutor, Jocelyn Main, was so interested in my CV. And one of our directors was in Manchester, contacted him, and it was approved. It didn't go through the bureaucracy. And I found myself at BBC radio training meeting great people like you who were to be future friends to me and my family. And then I also remember after our course, I remained working for the BBC African Service at Bush House, where I organized through Jocelyn and Dorothy Glenfell Williams to work under Robin White, where I was one of the producers on a program called Focus on Africa, which is still there at the moment. And I had a great time interviewing politicians, interviewing business people, journalists, and so forth in Africa. And I had a lot of connection that time through our visits. You remember, we used to go to different places, including Northern Ireland. When we went to Belfast, we went to Londonderry, and you also recall that some of the lessons I would be told that I was experienced. I didn't need to attend them, but I would be sent to some BBC departments in order just to enhance my networks and so forth, instead of spending time being taught how to splice edit. They say, no, you are not going to do the splice editing session. The best for you is going to meet so-and-so at Radio 4 or so-and-so at Radio 2, or go and meet so-and-so at Bush House. So I really liked the way Jocelyn and Bobby J, if you remember Bobby J, and Tim Neal organized that course for me, both the practical aspect of the course as well as the other side issues where I enhanced my networking. So as a result, during those years, of course, many people have retired now, but each time I revisited London, I would meet those people and would take it from there. Even when some of them visit Zimbabwe and they have some projects, I would be the point person. Even right now, I'm still the point person to many of them because they remember me from those BBC days where really over and above the course that we did, there was a lot of network which really sank up to this day and time, where only there's change because the human resources has changed and people are now much older than what they looked like during that time. Just like you and me, if we look at our photos in 1989 and what we look like in these videos, we've changed drastically.
So this was a number of years ago now. The time is passing very quickly. I too remember very vividly and fondly those months that we spent at the BBC training school. And I found myself enriched through what we have learned. Not so much technical parts, because I too knew them already by then, but more the whole story and how to see the radio as a means of conveying the truth to the people around us. And you have done a better job in keeping in touch, it seems to me, with some of those people than myself. And kind of,
actually, you are right. I kept in touch with many people. Of course, that generation is slowly disappearing. But I must say that those networks which we established, including the network that I established with you, that in later years after BBC, you and I were to become very great friends to the extent that Croatia, your home country, has become my second home. Not only me, but even my family, all members of my family have visited Croatia. Some twice, I think I visited 3 times because of you. And I've even had other links, in next door in Hungary, where I'm very close now to the Central University of Europe. And I've also visited Hungary, just like another third home. So I'm really grateful with the connection that we had during that time. And later in life, when you and I connected, and when you were now running the Renewing Minds program in Croatia, Rome, you invited me and Agnes. First time, we didn't believe that we were going to find ourselves in that part of the world. But you know what? God performs wonders in our lives. There we were. I'd told you, actually, remember, you just come from Australia. I said, this project that you are running is very nice, and I'm looking at your pictures. I cannot imagine myself in those beautiful places. I think you had taken a photo near Lake Fuji and so forth. And you said, John, you and your wife, you'll be here very soon. And you did invited us, and we were so grateful. And then the following year, our daughter, the following year, our son, and then I came with our other daughter. And just last year, although she did not go to Croatia, our last born daughter was in Ohrid in Macedonia for the 20 years of Rome gathering. And how apt it was, because you were also retiring as the director of Rome and handing over to a young man we had seen growing in Rome in the name of Boyan. Forgive me, it's Rokovac, in the name of Boyan, and we're so excited about that.
Yeah. Maybe we get on talking a little bit later about this too, and we even split this into two parts, our conversation if necessary, because I'm enjoying what is happening now. Since you have mentioned Rome, renewing our minds, it has been really a joy for me to be given this privilege to lead this movement, this project, this ministry for 18 years out of a 20 years long history so far. Yes, it's now behind me, not completely, but in a sense that now younger men is leading a movement that is meant for young people, and I completely trust in the leadership of Bojan Ruvarac. But the years that I've spent with Rome have been really joy and pleasure to invest years in young people and trying to kind of help them to become leaders who are serving their communities rather than leaders who are corrupt and serving themselves. So having you, having your wife, and having some of your children coming to Rome.
All of them, by the way.
All of them,
yes.
now we are thinking about including Macedonia. Has been a blessing to us because we could get some of the insight from your part of the world, because just as much as that part of the world, the Balkans and former Yugoslavia, Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, had their share in troubles years back, there's some history with your country that kind of learning from it contributes also to us. But at this moment, I want to go back to you and to BBC, and I would like to ask you a question, because I often think about what I have learned, what you have actually, if you kind of try to assess, and this was not, 30 years ago, is it 40? I don't know, when we were at BBC,
31 years, yes.
Yeah. What, if you can still kind of recall, and I know you have been part of many similar training experiences, but if you can recall, if there is one thing or two things that you could say, okay, this is what I got from those several months at BBC, what would those things be?
What I got really was that broadcasting was part of our lives. If you broadcast and you don't involve your day-to-day life in a meaningful way, it will not excite you. The approach of the BBC in training us and showing us all those cultural places, you remember the castles that we visited, the historic places that we visited as part of our training and so forth, really sank into me as something that we should do so that our broadcasting or our journalism is not divorced from our day-to-day lives. It must move with the way the people are living, and it must be relaxed but remain highly professional. So that is what I learned. And that networking is also very important for today and for the future. That whatever you do, whether you are in the same country or you are going to be visiting other countries, it is always good to know a variety of people so that when programming comes, you get the right people to talk to discuss with, so that your programs are enriched. So that's one of the greatest things that I learned from the BBC course. Otherwise, we would have just spent hours and hours in the lecture rooms. But those people who came to speak to us about their experiences from different parts of the BBC, including the radio stations themselves, the radio 1 up to 4, and they also had the drama department, the news department, they also had continuing education and so forth, world service. All those people really instilled into us our love for the job of broadcasting journalism. And also I could tell from that time that BBC was moving towards multi-skilling. I think that's what has made my job as a broadcaster very exciting, in that I've not remained doing the same thing. I do write a lot. I interview people, write a lot, even quite a lot. And even during my time at ZBC, and even right now, I don't only deal with radio as it is audio, but I do audio, video broadcasting, the podcasts. I do write. I do share some discussions and so forth. I'm also involved in some dramas and mini features. I'm involved in training. I'm involved in even in finance. How is the media financed? Even right now, I've been involved in some consultancies where I even study the landscape of broadcasting. So you go beyond the studio and you also look at the industry in its entirety. You look at how it is impacting other sectors of life or other parts of life. That makes it interesting. You don't get bored. But if you keep on doing one program in the same format for many years, working for this, doing the same thing, you get tired. But what I learned, even the rotation system, you remember, we were being told about the rotation system in BBC, where someone who works in news and current affairs will just decide that for the next 6 months, I just want to be attached to the drama department, and I get to understand it. Oh, from the drama department, I want to be attached to the features department. The reason being, they are preparing you for tomorrow. And I'm very glad that what BBC radio training did by sending me around different parts of the BBC, including management and finance and other places, just understand what goes on there, was a big asset to me. It really has helped me to remain in the medium or in the media. Right now, it's difficult to call me a radio broadcaster because I've even gone beyond radio. Radio is my specialty, but you cannot rule me out in TV. You cannot rule me out in management. You cannot rule me out in training. You cannot rule me out in social media. I sometimes challenge young people that as far as social media is concerned, I think I'm even far, far ahead of some of you young people because I've learned it, I've understood it, and I use it and quite responsibly too. So those are the things I think that sort of catapulted from our training at the BBC.
Yeah. In a moment, I want to ask you what happened after BBC. But let me just comment also a little bit and let me reflect for a moment on what I took from BBC experience in 1989. There are a number of things, but two things that I would like to single out is one you already mentioned. It was not only a classroom and studio editing and putting a few programs together. It was the access that we were given to go to different departments of BBC and have some experience of how different producers putting the programs together, working. So gaining even an insight, although not spending a lot of time, maybe with them, would widen the scope and understanding of what broadcasting is all about. And let us still remember that I believe that BBC was the thing at that time. And I would even dare say that even today, BBC serves as a model, example, how radio is being done. The other thing that I took, the emphasis on being objective. It is hard to be neutral. It's impossible to be nothing is really neutral, but it is possible to be objective. It is possible to aim as much as one can to hear the two sides of the story, not only to press upon one side of the story, and as much as possible to pursue the truth in the story. This is something that I took from BBC at the and maybe I remember it because today the truth is being sacrificed. I don't know how in Zimbabwe, but I'm thinking about when I'm looking at myself and when I think the media broadcasting in general, how much of this is agenda driven, then I remember what we were taught at BBC number of years ago. And as I said, I still take BBC as a model, an example of how broadcasting is made, how radio is made, how TV is being made. Somewhat this has been somewhat lost today, but it's good to remember that. But I do want to ask a question now about soon after you returned from England in 1989 back to your country, at some point you left the state-owned radio broadcasting, and with some of your friends you created something else. Shall I call it an alternative broadcasting outlet. What
Okay.
happened? Why did you do
Well,
this? And
okay, what happened was,
the radio voice of the people. I think this was the name of your broadcasting outlet station production.
yes, yes, I'm still with the Radio Voice of the People, although it is now very low key. I'll come to that, but I'm still there. What happened was when I came back to Zimbabwe, I was very much involved in different management portfolios. I became head of an English station called Radio 1. I became head of Radio 4, where I was when I came to BBC. And then I also became the general manager of all the 4 national radio stations. And I also was transferred to be the general manager of a region which sort of embraced everything in southern part of the country in Bulawayo, which is where I got your contact that, after 7 years of missing you, I just got a contact from someone. Up to now, I don't know the gentleman who brought the letter from you whom you had met in New York, and we resumed our contact. But all I know is someone from the Seventh-day Adventist Church you had met at a conference in New York. So then after, when we were in Bulawayo, when I was general manager of this regional station, which sort of embraced everything: news, current affairs, radio stations, administration, canteen, grounds, and everything. I were then retired. Things were really changing in my country because the government was intentional in being in control of the media. So some of us who had been there around were challenging one or two things, especially with regards to our independence. We became very unpopular and we were retired. Fortunately, because many avenues were then opened for us. So that's how I left. It wasn't voluntary, but our team at the top was retired. And this is how I left the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation after 27 years of dedicated, loyal service to the corporation in various capacities. And immediately, I was taken by Radio Voice of the People because they were already persuading me when I was still at ZBC that we want you to come and join us. And I said, no, with all this time that I've spent at ZBC, I would rather be retired properly with a proper package or a pension, and which is what later happened. And then I then joined the Radio Voice of the People. We also had our challenges in that this was considered a pirate radio station. We're broadcasting using the internet, but firstly, we're broadcasting on shortwave through the Radio Netherlands transmitters for quite some time. We're not part of Radio Netherlands. We're not part of the Netherlands government, but it was just a question of fundraising and hiring those transmitters in order to broadcast on shortwave. But of course, shortwave also has its challenges. As new media was developing, we also looked at other ways and means of having our products on the internet and so forth, which is what we're doing now. But like I said, we're no longer as big as we used to be. And now we're involved in small projects which we broadcast on the internet, where stories to publish on the internet, and mainly carry out programs for young journalists. We're very much involved in internet governance, and my role there really is mentorship, more than running a radio station where I'm just mentoring young people. I leave them to do most of the work, and it's something that I'm doing as I go towards actually formally retiring in broadcasting and doing other things. So it's gradual, it's coming up, but I'm happy that I'm playing that pivotal role in mentoring young people, giving them space, studio, just discussing the stories, telling them about my experience in the BBC, in Croatia, in Hungary, in Jordan, and different parts of the world where I have been. So, and also I intend really, maybe that's a question that's coming up, to document some of these things that I've gone through, including the friendship that we've had. and knowing our situation back home here, just to sit down and say I've retired is very difficult, because all our pensions were swallowed by inflation, all our savings were swallowed by inflation. The economy just went down to the extent that working is just like starting afresh. And if you just sit down and say I won't work, you will starve, because we still have to send some relatives we have adopted in our culture. We look after our brothers, children, grandchildren, and we're still sending them to school, and we're supporting them through some of these small jobs that we're still doing, including some consultancies that I get hired to do. I do some training consultancies for radio, as well as management issues, as well as structural issues, like I was saying, on this landscape, that at times I do join some teams that carry out studies on our media landscape and so forth. So I'm still active, but not as active as I used to be many years ago, but I'm very much visible in our local media. I'm very much active to a certain extent, but the focus of whatever I do is sort of grooming some youngsters towards doing some of the things that I've been doing over the nearly 5 decades that I've been in broadcasting.
And this is where the first part of our conversation with John Masuku, a leading Zimbabwe journalist, stops. Do not miss to watch the closing second part of the interview, which gets more exciting as it progresses further. In it, John will share more about his years of service with the pirate radio station Voice of the People, his thoughts on integrity in journalism, experiences with the Renewing Our Minds initiative, his journey of faith, and the ways it shaped his life, and much more. Tune to Face Moments again soon to hear the continuation of this story. I'm Tihomir Kukola, producer of Face Moments. God bless you.